It's funny how we say things like, information is power, but like, do we really even think about what that means,
Yeah.
Like in our everyday lives?
Yeah, totally. And it's great you want to dive deeper into this. It's more than just knowing how to use a computer. You'd be surprised how many people think that's all information management is.
Oh, for sure. It's
Yeah.
way more than that. I mean, think about it. We are just swimming in information constantly every time we go online. But you've been checking out some courses about this, and this one, Information Management, Strategy and Data Protection. The fifth Allison platform description is, well, it's not your typical boring course description.
Yeah, no, not at all. This one actually cuts to the chase. It gets to why this is so important, even if you don't work in IT. They're really pushing how this is an organizational skill, which might sound a little weird at first.
Right, because most people think of it as a me thing, right? Like my files, my problem.
Exactly. But just try and imagine. Try to find one super important email from like months ago, or that one research paper you need, and you have absolutely zero organization, total chaos, right? Being good at information management, it's all about setting up those systems, whether it's your own files or for a whole company, it's about those systems.
And that's where the data versus information thing comes in, don't you think?
Yeah.
They make a point to separate the two in the description. It's a small thing, but it feels huge.
Huge for sure. So data on its own is kind of like, those bins of Legos and it's just all the random pieces? That's data. Information is when you take those Legos and actually make something. You add the context. It has meaning then and a purpose.
So a random spreadsheet with a bunch of numbers, that's data. But turning that into a sales report that highlights the important trends, now that's information.
Yes, exactly. And in this course, they're focused on using information to do better, to improve performance, because, what's the point of a perfect report if it doesn't actually help you make better decisions?
Yeah, like having a fully stocked kitchen, but having no idea how to cook. But one thing that really stood out in this description was how they talked about the value of information. They said it was subjective. How do you even measure that?
And that's where things get interesting. They mention 3 ways to measure information's value, which I won't spoil now, but it definitely makes you think. Like, how much is a piece of information actually worth? And to who?
Right. It's like that saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure, but for data.
Huh? Perfect analogy. And then there's this whole other thing, this information governance, which just sounds really official.
Yeah, it does. Like something out of a spy movie. What is that exactly?
So think of it as like the rules and the processes that companies or even just you use to make sure information is being handled, well, responsibly, I guess. It's about accuracy, security, making sure the right people get the right info at the right time, that kind of thing.
So we're talking about strategy. We're talking about how much it's worth. We're talking rules and processes. It's definitely not just hitting save anymore, is it?
No way. And we haven't even touched on how computers deal with all of this. The course even mentions something called record management, which sounds kind of old school now, with the cloud and
Oh,
everything.
totally. Who even uses filing cabinets anymore?
Right. But those old school principles, they still apply, surprisingly. Think about legal stuff, financial records, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's all digital, but it still has to be organized and secure and easy to find when you need it. So really, it's about taking those old school ideas and applying them to the digital world.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we might not have filing cabinets anymore, but it's like we just have digital ones now, right?
Yeah.
Just way, way bigger.
Yeah. And that's where things get really wild because the course description talks about how computers deal with all that data redundancy, data warehouses, in-memory computing. It's a whole other language.
Right. And it sounds crazy complicated. Like, what does that even mean? I get data, but data redundancy. Data warehouses, what are those?
Okay, so imagine building a house. Data redundancy is like having extra bricks and wood in case something happens, they break or whatever. You might not need them, but you want them there just in case. And data warehouses are more like, imagine this huge warehouse with everything. All the stuff you need to build every house in the whole neighborhood is there.
Instead of wood and nails, though, it's ones and zeros.
Yep. And it's cool how all this ties into the whole ethics side of managing information. Because with this much data everywhere, how we protect it, technically and ethically, it's huge. The course mentions data protection and intellectual property, too. Another whole layer to this.
Because, yeah, it's one thing to be able to organize and understand all this information, but handle it responsibly, whole other thing.
Absolutely. And that's where things get really interesting. Because it's not even just about hackers and data breaches. It's about respecting privacy, making sure the information is accurate, using it ethically.
This is what I love about doing these deep dives. We start with something seemingly simple, like a course description, and boom, all these complex ideas come out.
It really shows how much is hidden in plain sight, doesn't it? And we're just getting started.
Right. So for everyone listening, buckle up. We've got a lot more to cover in part 2 of this deep dive. Stay tuned.
It's easy to forget, right? Like, information management has been around forever.
I know, it's not like this is brand new, this information age we're always talking about.
It's true. And think about it. Libraries, archives, museums, those are all about managing information. They're just, a little less digital.
Right. It's the same idea at the core, it's just the format that's different.
Exactly. Those core principles, they haven't really changed. It's about organization, keeping things safe, making sure people can actually access the information. These are all things humans have been dealing with for a really long time. What's different now is just how much information there is.
It's true. It's like it's exploding. Which I guess brings us back to those data warehouses you were talking about, those huge digital storage places. What's up with those?
Okay, so think about it this way. If you're building one house, right, you might have a shed in the back. You keep all your tools and extra stuff in there. But what if you're building a whole city? You'd need a huge warehouse to keep all the stuff organized, and it would have to be in a central location so everyone could get to it. That's what a data warehouse does, just for information.
So like instead of lumber and nails, it's ones and zeros in those warehouses.
Exactly. And all that data, it just keeps growing. So these warehouses are how companies keep up. It's how they make sense of it all.
Which is where I'm guessing that in-memory computing thing you mentioned comes in, right? Because, okay, you have all this data, but actually being able to use it to get to it quickly, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, for sure. Imagine you need one specific document, but it's in that giant warehouse we were just talking about. It would take forever to find. In-memory computing is like having this superpower where you just think about the information and boom, it's right there. It makes analyzing and getting insights from the data so much faster.
So it's like instead of having to look through a whole encyclopedia, you just Google it.
Perfect analogy. And in some fields, that speed is critical, right? Like in finance, marketing, places where split-second decisions can make or break you. And those decisions need to be based on the most up-to-date information.
It's true. It would be like having a superpower, being able to react so much faster because you have the right information instantly.
And that's where the strategy part of information management comes in, because it's not enough to just have access to a ton of information, right? You need to know what you're looking for, how to analyze it, and then how to actually use it to make a good decision. It's like having all the puzzle pieces, but not knowing how they fit together to make the picture.
So it's like you need a game plan. Just having the tools isn't enough. Which, you were going to tell us about those 3 ways of measuring the value of information, and then, well, you left us hanging.
Oh, yeah. The million-dollar question. Well, this course description, it says the 3 main things are, is it relevant, is it current, and is it accurate?
So basically, it needs to be useful, up-to-date, and correct. Seems kind of obvious when you put it like that.
All right. But really think about it for a second. A report that's using old data, even if it's about something relevant, it's not going to be that helpful. And if it's too late, even if the information is accurate, well, you might have already missed your chance.
Like showing up to a party after it's over, even with the best snacks.
Exactly. And being accurate, well, that goes without saying. Bad information leads to bad decisions, which waste time, money, and can even be harmful.
It's like using the wrong ingredients in a recipe. You might end up with something that's, edible, but it's not going to be what you wanted.
Huh. Love that. And that's why information management is a constant thing. You're always checking your information, making sure it's good, making sure your strategy still works.
It's like having a garden. You're weeding out the bad data, helping the good stuff grow, and making sure it's all organized so you can easily find what you need. Speaking of organized, this deep dive has certainly given us a lot to think about. But there's one more thing in that course description, that ethical dimension thing.
Ah, yes, that's right. It's about remembering the responsibility that comes with having information.
Because it's one thing to know how to organize it and be good at managing it, but actually using that knowledge ethically, that's the real challenge.
For sure. And that's where those legal terms, copyright, intellectual property, data protection, those come in. Those were the rules of the road, They're there to protect the people who created the information and to stop it from being used in harmful ways.
So it's like, okay, you know how to drive, but that doesn't mean you can just do whatever you want in a car, right? There are rules for a reason.
Exactly. And all those rules, they're even more important now that we live in a digital world and rely on digital information for basically everything.
It makes you wonder, like, how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
Be ethical, I mean. Especially with all the misinformation and fake news flying around online, it can feel impossible to keep up.
Totally. And that's where information literacy is key. Remember hearing about that, maybe back in school or something.
Yeah, vaguely. But it wasn't really presented as, like, this vital life skill, you know? More like how to use the library, that kind of thing.
Right, but it's way more than that now. Information literacy these days, it's all about being able to look at the digital world critically, to look at the information we see and be able to decide if it's reliable or not. Spotting biases, that kind of thing.
So like having a BS detector, but for the internet.
Exactly. Because, I mean, let's be real. Not everything you read online is true. There's clickbait everywhere, social media posts with iffy sources, and some stuff is just straight up made to mislead people.
It can feel like the Wild West out there sometimes, you know?
Oh, totally. And that's why it's so important to really look at the source of the information. Is it from somewhere you've heard of? Is it a known organization? Are other places reporting the same thing? Or is it just this one random site? You got to think about these things.
So basically, don't just believe everything you read. And do your research before you share something.
Yes, exactly. And, if something does turn out to be fake, don't be afraid to say something. We all got to do our part to stop this stuff from spreading.
Yeah.
You can politely point it out, maybe share a link to a better source.
Yeah, it's like being a good digital citizen.
Exactly. We need to be good at finding information, but also responsible with it and help make it a better experience for everyone.
We need like a global information literacy upgrade.
Right. Because in the end, information is power. But like any power, it can be used in good ways and bad ways. It's on us to use it wisely.
This deep dive has been amazing. We started with a simple course description, and it's like we opened up this whole other world, a whole new way of looking at how we deal with information responsibly in this digital age.
It never ceases to amaze me, the conversations that come out of these deep dives, Things we just take for granted.
It's true. And for everyone listening, we hope this got you thinking and maybe gave you some ideas of how to find information effectively, how to manage it, and how to use it ethically, of course.
Remember, knowledge is power, but use it wisely.
Love it. And if you want to learn more, the Allison platform is a good place to start. They have a whole course on information management. Until next time, happy learning, everyone.